Rain had been tapping the courthouse windows since dawn. The sky looked like wet wool pulled over the city. I held a heavy file and felt an old ache in my chest. After 32 years on the bench, quiet mornings still worried me. If you've ever watched a tired soul walk into a hard room, stay with me. Some days a courtroom asks more from us than patience. Some days it asks for heart, and that is harder. I'm Judge Judy Marlowe, and I've learned something bitter over the years. Pain rarely arrives loud. Most of the time it comes in wearing work boots. Most of the time it says, "Yes, ma'am," before it sits down. That morning, the courtroom smelled like wet coats and old paper. The radiator clicked like tired teeth inside the wall. My clerk set the file before me without a word. Even she looked bothered by it. The top page showed a total that made me stop breathing for a beat. $5,000. Not for violence, not for theft. It was page after page of city citations, stamped photos, printed times, fees, penalties, more penalties. The kind of neat little pile that makes misery look organized. That always puts me on guard. At the left table sat the city prosecutor, Ms. Ellen Greer. Her suit was pressed flat and sharp as folded paper. She trusted records because records had never lied to her, at least not in a way she could hear. The benches were half full with people waiting on their own troubles. A mother bounced a sleeping baby on her shoulder. An old man kept rubbing a cap between both hands. Then the side door opened and my morning finally arrived. He stepped in like a man entering a church after bad news. Not slow because he was lazy, slow because his body had already spent itself somewhere else. I saw that before he spoke. His shirt had once been white, but the day had worn it gray. One sleeve held a faint bleach mark near the wrist. His tie was missing, though the collar still carried its crease. He had dressed for respect, then worked straight through it. His jacket was too thin for that kind of rain. One shoulder sagged where a seam had been stitched by hand. His pants were clean but shiny at the knees. The shine comes from kneeling more than resting. His boots were black once. Now the leather had gone dull and thirsty. The left toe was split just enough to show pale cloth underneath. Wet weather had found him before the courthouse did. His hands told me the rest. The knuckles were cracked white with dry soap and cold air. 2 fingers wore fresh bandages, wrapped neatly by someone careful. Men in trouble rarely bandaged themselves that neatly. His face was narrow from missed meals and lost sleep, not thin by nature, thin from being pulled on by life from too many sides. His beard was shaved close, but not evenly. There were deep half moons under both eyes. His eyelids looked heavy, but his eyes were alert. That kind of alert comes from raising children alone. You sleep, but some part of you never does. He held his cap against his stomach with both hands, not twisting it, not hiding behind it, just holding on to the only thing not asking something from him. When he gave his name, his voice surprised the room. It was soft, almost careful, like he did not wish to disturb anyone. "Daniel Reyes," he said. Then he stood a little straighter, as if names still mattered. Ms. Greer rose and began exactly where people like her always begin. Dates, times, locations, repeated violations, unpaid penalties, mailed notices. She did not raise her voice. She didn't have to. 17 citations, she said. Same loading zone behind Pritchard Elementary, same restricted hours, same registered vehicle. Each citation carried a fine. Each unpaid fine gained a late fee. Each late fee bred another fee behind it. By the end, the debt had fattened itself into $5,000. She called it a pattern. She called it repeated disregard. She called it fair notice and standard enforcement. Everything sounded clean in her mouth. I looked back at Mr. Reyes. He did not roll his eyes. He did not sigh. He looked like a man who had run out of room to defend himself. So I asked the first thing his body had already told me, "Mr. Reyes, where do you work?" He blinked once, as if nobody had asked that yet. Then he answered, "All 3 places." "Nights," he said, "I clean offices downtown. Mornings, I load trucks at a warehouse near the river. Evenings, I wash dishes at the Maple Street Grill. On Sundays, I sleep when the kids are at church." The room shifted at that, not loudly, just the way people move when a fact lands harder than expected. Even the baby in the back stopped fussing. I asked what time his day began. He said a little after 3. He said it the way people mention weather, like there was no point arguing with it. He woke before dawn to start laundry, pack lunches, and leave notes. Then he walked his youngest to the neighbor upstairs. Then he caught the bus to the office building. Then the rest of his day began. I asked about the children. His fingers tightened around the cap brim. He swallowed before he answered. 3 of them, Your Honor. Mateo was 12 and trying hard to act older. Lucia was 9 and asked too many brave questions. Gabriel was 6 and still slept with one sock off. That detail told me everything I needed. I asked where their mother was, though I already knew the shape. He looked down at the floor between his boots. She died last spring, he said. Infection after a bad fall at work. He said the hospital tried. He said she fought. He said the kids still listened for her key at the door. Then he stopped talking and breathed through his nose. That was the second weight in the room. 3 jobs was pain. Widowhood with 3 children was deeper pain, but the third truth had not arrived yet. I turned back to the papers. Every printed time sat inside the same narrow window. 12:12, 12:14, 12:16, 12:11, 12:17, 17 violations all around noon. So I asked the question that changed everything. Mr. Reyes, when is your lunch break? He looked up at me so fast his chair made a sound. Then his eyes filled without a tear falling. That is my lunch break, he said, those minutes right there. That's when I drive to Lucia's school. That's when I bring her food. I leaned back and let silence do its work. Then I asked why he had to bring it himself. The answer came slow at first, then it came all at once. Lucia had diabetes, he said. Her blood sugar could drop hard and fast around noon. The school nurse could help with the insulin, but the meal had to be exact. He packed it every morning in a blue lunchbox, turkey on wheat, apple slices counted out, crackers in a bag with the carbs written on tape. He knew the numbers because he had learned them at midnight. At hospital bedsides, at kitchen tables, with one child sleeping on his knee. Months earlier, the cafeteria had handed Lucia the wrong tray. Her sugar crashed before the last bell. She turned gray in class, he said. An ambulance came. That sentence changed the air more than any raised voice could. People did not look at him now. They looked at the little stack of tickets. Those papers started to look smaller. He told me he had asked the school for help. He had tried dropping the lunch earlier, but his night shift ended after the nurse arrived. His warehouse shift started before school did. No family close by, no spare money for special meal service, no safe legal space behind the school at that hour. The front lot was often blocked by delivery trucks, so during his warehouse lunch break, he drove the lunch over himself. He parked by the back entrance for 5 or 6 minutes. He handed the blue box and insulin pouch to the nurse. Then he ran back to the car. Let me ask you something. When every mark on a page lands at the same minute, don't you wonder why? Don't you feel there might be a life under those numbers? Don't you want to look closer? I asked him why he never challenged the first ticket. He looked ashamed, and I hated that look on decent people. He said he never saw the early notices. The city mailed them to his old apartment. After his wife died, he moved the children upstairs with a retired neighbor. Cheaper rent, 1 extra set of eyes on the kids, a place where grief could fit beside groceries. By the time the letters reached him, the debt had already grown teeth. He opened one envelope after another at midnight. He said the kitchen looked full of snow, white paper everywhere. I asked if he ate during those lunch runs. He gave a tired little smile that hurt to watch. Usually just coffee, he said, sometimes water. Then he said the thing that broke the room. I call it my lunch break because work calls it that. But really, Your Honor, it's the part of the day when I know my girl is safe. That's all it is. He reached into his jacket and asked if he could show me something. It was not dramatic, just a folded note with soft creases at the corners. The kind children open again and again. The paper said, Dad packed the red crackers today. That means I can have juice later. Love you. Lucia. There was a little heart in green marker beside her name. The heart had been traced twice, maybe 3 times. I looked from that note to the city's exhibits. One stack felt heavier than the other. I asked the bailiff to collect the note gently. Then I turned to Ms. Greer. Now it was my turn to ask questions, real ones. Counselor, I said, when did the city send the first notice? She named a date 3 months after the first citation. I asked why it took so long. She said the system processed violations in batches. Batches, I repeated, so the city watched the same car stop at the same school for weeks. It issued citation after citation. and nobody thought to intervene sooner. She said enforcement was automated. The camera recorded the violation. The notice followed the standard timeline. The city had no duty to educate repeat offenders in person. That answer may have satisfied a manual. It did not satisfy me. I asked whether any human being reviewed the pattern before the fines stacked. She said, not usually, not usually. There is a phrase that has hidden more cruelty than most insults. It lets people sleep beside suffering they helped build. It lets them call it routine. I asked for the camera footage. The clerk dimmed the side screen, and the room went still. Rain tracked down the windows behind us like thin gray threads. Then the first clip began. There was Mr. Reyes's old sedan, pulled tight to the curb, hazards blinking, paint peeling near the trunk, one brake light weaker than the other. The rear door opened before the engine stopped shaking. He stepped out with a blue lunchbox in one hand. An insulin pouch hung from his wrist by 2 fingers. He was already moving at a half run. He did not smoke. He did not lean on the car. He did not chat with anyone. He moved like a man racing a clock he feared. Another clip showed the back school door swinging open. A nurse in navy scrubs took the lunchbox and the pouch. Mr. Reyes checked his watch. Then he ran back through the rain. The whole stop lasted 5 minutes and 41 seconds. The next clip lasted 6 minutes and 3 seconds. The next was even shorter. All of them looked the same. Then we enlarged one still photo. His face was turned toward the camera that day, not angry, not careless, just scared he might be late. That is the expression systems miss. They see a plate number. They do not see a father trying not to fail. I asked for the school records he had attached to his appeal. The clerk handed me nurse logs and glucose notes. Lucia Reyes, daily noon intake, observed. Every date matched the citations. Every time sat inside the same small window. The blue lunchbox was there in the notes, too. Homemade meal received from father. Then came the warehouse time cards. Clock out at noon. Clock in at 12:30. No missing shifts. His lunch break was exactly 30 minutes. The school was 9 minutes away in light traffic. That left barely enough time to park, run, hand off food, and return. It also explained the desperate parking choice. Before I go further, hold this close. One hard question asked too late can ruin a life. One hard question asked in time can save one. That is how thin the line really is. Ms. Greer cleared her throat and made one final attempt for the rules. She said the zone existed for safety. She said children could be hurt if everyone stopped there. She was not wrong about that. Rules matter, I told her. They matter because real people can get hurt. But rules are not trophies, they are tools. If a rule keeps children safe, I will enforce it. If a rule is used without thought, I will question it. And if a system keeps quiet while debt grows, I will name that wrong, out loud. I asked whether the city had legal spaces nearby during those weeks. Public Works photos were entered. Half the block was fenced for pipe repair. Meters were bagged and covered in orange plastic. So the city had reduced parking. The city had delayed notice. The city had automated enforcement. And the city wanted $5,000 from a widowed father delivering medical lunch. Ms. Greer's face changed then just a little, not from shame alone, from recognition. She was finally seeing a person where numbers had been. She said the court could perhaps waive some late penalties. Perhaps. I had heard enough of perhaps. I folded my hands and prepared to rule. I set the note from Lucia beside the citation stack. I took off my glasses. I looked at Mr. Reyes first, then I looked at the city. The law is clear, I said. Restricted zones exist for good reason. A driver cannot simply decide they do not apply. That much is true. Then I tapped the papers once with my finger. The gavel waited near my right hand, but justice does not end with the first true sentence. It begins there. This court finds that the city failed meaningful notice. This court finds that the violations were part of one repeated necessity. This court finds no evidence of reckless disregard. This court finds urgent family care at the center of every stop. The late fees are vacated. The penalties built on those fees are vacated. The underlying citations are dismissed in the interest of justice. The balance owed is zero. I lifted the gavel. I let the room hear the pause before the sound. Then I brought it down once, clean and final. Mr. Reyes did not cry the way movies teach you to expect. He bowed his head so fast his chin hit his chest. Both hands covered his mouth, his shoulders locked, then shook once. He tried to say thank you, but no words came out. Instead, he looked at the floor between his boots. One drop fell onto the leather near the split toe. He wiped his face with the heel of his hand. Then he laughed once. A small broken sound, not joy exactly. Relief so sudden it hurt. He kept nodding to himself as if checking the words were real. 0. I had seen that look before. It is the face people make when a wall moves. I was not finished. Mr. Reyes, I said, what are your children eating tomorrow? He looked up, confused by the question. He said, whatever I can pack tonight, ma'am. I asked my clerk to stand. Before this father leaves my courtroom, call the school district meal office. Call family services, call the hospital social worker listed in these records. We are going to build a lawful plan before the day ends. Front office drop-off, medical meal approval, temporary parking access if the district can issue it. That was not charity. That was common sense, arriving late. Courts cannot raise children for people, but sometimes we can remove one stone from the road. From the back row, a woman stood before anyone called on her. She wore navy scrubs under a raincoat and held her purse to her side. I recognized her from the video, the school nurse. My name is Mrs. Hahn, she said. I know I'm not supposed to interrupt, but that man never once came in late for his daughter. Not once. She said he apologized every single day for parking there. She said he always smelled like bleach and dish soap. She said he still remembered to ask whether Lucia had smiled that morning. The room listened without moving. Then Mrs. Hahn added one more thing. On the day his own hand was bandaged, he still cut Lucia's apple slices smaller. Because her loose tooth hurt. That was all she said. If someone has ever seen your struggle without making a speech about it, remember them. Those quiet witnesses hold the world together more than they know. Sometimes mercy arrives from the back row. Sometimes that is enough. Mr. Reyes turned and looked at Mrs. Hahn like he had forgotten witnesses existed. He pressed his cap to his heart. She nodded once and sat down. No performance, just truth. When the next matter was called, the room was not the same room. People sat differently. They looked at one another more softly. That is one of the few blessings of open court. 2 weeks later, the story slipped past those courthouse walls. A local reporter had been in the gallery that day. She wrote about the father, the lunchbox, and the noon camera clips. Then the city woke up to itself. My chambers received letters first, not a flood at once. A steady stack that grew by the hour. Teachers wrote, truck drivers wrote, widows wrote. By the end of the second week, there were 312 letters. 47 grocery cards arrived in plain envelopes. A church collected winter coats for the children. A mechanic offered free brake work on the sedan. One woman mailed $11.20 with a note. She said it was all she could spare until Friday. She said fathers like that should not stand alone. I kept that note longer than most orders. A small fund opened through a neighborhood center. People gave in amounts that told their own stories. $8, $23, $51 from a retired bus driver, $600 from a restaurant owner who had lost his wife young. Within 10 days, the fund held $18,643. Not enough to erase grief, but enough to breathe. 3 job offers followed, one from a hospital maintenance office, one from a property company with day hours, one from a warehouse supervisor who said he understood impossible schedules. The school district changed its meal handoff rule that month. Parents with medical lunch plans could now leave approved meals safely at the front desk. No backdoor sprinting, no curb gamble. The city, embarrassed at last, reviewed the citation process. Batch delays were shortened. Repeat patterns now required human review before fees could pile higher. That should have happened years earlier. I do not flatter myself that one hearing changed the world. Worlds do not change that easily, but one hearing changed one hallway, then one office, then one policy. Sometimes that is how change dares to begin. 6 months later, Mr. Reyes came back to see me on a Friday afternoon, not because he had new trouble, because he had promised Lucia he would say thank you in person. That matters to children. I knew him before my clerk read his name. The shoulders gave him away first. They were still broad, still worn by labor, but they were no longer caving inward. His shirt was blue this time and buttoned clean at the cuffs. His jacket fit across both shoulders. The old stitched seam was gone. So was the smell of rain trapped in cheap wool. The boots were different too. Still work boots, still honest. but polished enough to catch the hallway light. His hands had healed in small ways. The cracks were not as deep. The bandages were gone. His nails were clean at the edges. His face carried more color. The hollows under his eyes had softened. He still looked tired because parents do, but now he looked rested in the places that count. And his eyes. That was the true change. The old alertness was still there, but fear no longer sat in front of it. Beside him stood Lucia with 2 tight braids and a yellow sweater. She held a lunch pouch covered in tiny strawberries. It looked new, but carefully chosen. Children notice careful things. She had a school badge clipped to her collar. A little ribbon hung from it for perfect attendance. When I asked how she was, she said, "I eat on time now. That nearly did me in." Mateo and Gabriel waited near the door with a court officer. Mateo had grown taller in only half a year. Gabriel wore both socks that day. I remembered that and smiled. Mr. Reyes told me he now worked 1 full-time job at the hospital. He still washed dishes 2 nights a week by choice, not because he had to survive, because he wanted to clear old debts the right way. He had fixed the sedan brakes. He had moved the children into a better apartment with real sunlight. Lucia's meals were approved through the school. Mateo had joined a school robotics club. Gabriel, he said, had stopped sleeping by the front door. That sentence sat with me a long time. Children do not stop waiting for lost parents quickly, but sometimes safety teaches them how. Then Lucia reached into her lunch pouch and pulled out a note. She had written it herself in careful block letters. It said, "We keep going." Below that, she drew 4 stick figures holding a blue box. So let me ask you now, from where you're sitting, when someone in your town is drowning quietly, do you walk past? Or do you become the hands that keep a family above water? What kind of neighbor are you willing to be? After they left, the courthouse emptied the way it always does. Carts rolled. Lights clicked off 1 row at a time. Rain had finally stopped outside my window. I sat alone with the soft mess of another finished day. People think this job is about deciding who wins. Sometimes it is. Most times it is about deciding who gets fully seen. Paper is patient. It can wait on a desk forever without feeling a thing. People cannot. They bruise while the file gets thicker. That is why I still ask the extra question. Where do you work? Who waits for you at home? What happens at lunch? Because buried inside plain answers, whole lives are hiding. A blue lunchbox, a nurse by a back door, a father choosing his child over his meal. The law must have a spine, but if it has no soul, it becomes a machine. And I did not give my life to a machine. I gave it to people. Long after the benches emptied, I could still see that first morning version of him. Wet boots, bent shoulders, hands wrapped around a cap like prayer. Then I saw the second version, clean cuffs, a child with braids, a note that said, "We keep going." That is what justice is when it is done right. Not a miracle, not a speech, just enough room for a human being to stand back up. And on the hardest days, that is enough.